Hi, I'm Robert, and this is part 4 of my video series about Wernicke's encephalopathy. The part 1 talked about the pre-sickness. Part 2 talked about the trip to the hospital. Part 3 talked about the time spent in the hospital, and I just was leading up to being discharged from the hospital. So at this point in time, we are being discharged from the hospital. I'm very concerned about our departure. The primary doctor, general practitioner, instructed that there was nothing else that the hospital could do. There was no medication that could make my wife better. My wife was suffering from a vitamin deficiency called thiamine, which is a vitamin B1. The way it was explained to me was this vitamin deficiency caused short-term memory loss, and the short-term memory loss was her primary problem at this time because her situation was stabilized as best the hospital could do. At this point in time, as we're being discharged, my wife is pretty confused about everything that's going on around her. She really doesn't know where she's been for the past 4 or 5 days. She doesn't know that she's sick. And she's having a lot of repetition. She'll ask me where we're going. She'll ask me again where we're going. She'll repeat that question, where are we going? So as we packed up and departed the hospital, I realized that I had to begin to take the role as protector and guardian for her in my eyes, because there was nothing that I think she could have done on her own. My daughter was scheduled to come home. Today was Friday. My daughter's in college, and she was going to be home for a break for Thanksgiving, which I believe was going to be a week. Matter of fact, she wasn't going to be home for a week. She was going to be home for a couple of days, then go back to school for a couple of days, then come back home for Thanksgiving, and then go back to school. So I believe she came home strictly because we were being discharged from the hospital, and I forbade her from coming home and interrupting her studies while we were in the hospital. I felt like she didn't need to miss school dealing with us in the hospital. So I had talked to a couple of rehab centers and came to the conclusion that one in particular was a possibility. So I decided to drive my wife to this rehab facility. It was a primarily alcohol rehab, and it was a 30-day program. And depending on how you developed in 30 days, they would extend it maybe to 60 days. The cost of it was about $7,500, which I did not have. But I wasn't about to let the money stop me from visiting the clinic. So our first stop out of the hospital was directly to this clinic because we were discharged somewhere around 4:30. And my daughter was scheduled to be home close to 7 or 6:30. And I figured we can go to this clinic. When we arrived at the clinic, which was about 8 miles away from the hospital, the clinic was empty. The patients there and the staff there were out on a field trip per se. They had a scheduled outing. Now there was an instructor, seemed to be some sort of a manager there. They greeted us. They talked with us about it, and I just explained to my wife that, she had to beat her alcoholism. The alcohol consumption in her life was basically the straw that broke the camel's back that ended us in this predicament. It was the primary reason. There's always other reasons that something breaks the ice. Anyway, so my concern was her to get help for her alcoholism and beat that, and we'd go from there. We had an appointment, follow-up appointment with the liver doctor. We internal medicine doctor. We had an appointment follow-up appointment with the neurologist for about a week and a half to 2 weeks later. So, I wanted to see about getting her in the clinic. As we was meeting with the lady, they showed us around the facility, which is a relatively new facility, maybe a year or two old. Beautiful facility. The lady there that gave us the tour was explaining to us about the treatment that they give and the focus that they give on recovery for people. And of course, my wife had questions to ask. Now, my wife was not so confused that she couldn't have a conversation. She was just confused as to why she was there. She was confused as to where she had been the past 4 days. And she was confused about why we were even going through this process. Anyway, my wife, in an attempt to go along with my desires and plans, asked the lady a few questions. The lady answered them. 4 or 5 minutes later, for some reason, my wife asked the same questions. 3 or 4 general questions, and the lady answered them. 5 or 10 minutes later, my wife asked the same questions. And it was at that point that the lady turned and looked at me, which was a very painful moment for us, and basically told me that if your wife, if Diane is having problems remembering what we've discussed 5 minutes ago, what's this going to be like over a month time frame? Will she remember not having a drink? Will she remember the lessons that we try to teach her? And basically said, hey, you can come back and talk to our instructor, but I don't see how our facility is going to help someone that can't remember what happened 5 minutes ago. Just a overwhelming flow of disappointment for me to try to grasp the thought that we had been discharged from the hospital, and now my wife of 23 years was in a predicament where she couldn't even get help for her alcoholism. The doctors in the hospital pled with her to give up alcohol. The gastrologist or the liver doctor pled with her to give up alcohol. The neurologist instructed her that her alcohol consumption days needed to be over. And now I'm at the clinic where these people are trained to help her best to get through that. And they're telling me they don't think they can help her. Well, I had left the person that was responsible for running the clinic, the director, a couple of messages during the week, none of which was returned. And so I was leaving this person that was giving us the tour of the facility, my name and number, and asked them to have the director call me. And we left the facility. At this point, I was pretty much broken and hurting person. I was with my wife, knowing that I needed to take care of her, and I needed help myself. I was worn out, exhausted, and I remember that our church that I attend has a program called Celebrate Recovery. And Celebrate Recovery has several dimensions to it, one of which is to help people that are suffering with substance abuse to conquer that in a good Christian atmosphere. Another aspect of it is to help people with, a little bit of depression, codependency issues, hurt, anger, all different things. So I figured that was a good place for her and I to be. We went and got something to eat and went to Celebrate Recovery, which started at 7. We got there around 6:30. We went through the Celebrate Recovery. Part of that is separating into different classrooms. And I attended the classroom that had to do with people that was mainly dealing with codependency issues, and escorted her to the classroom that dealt with people with, I think, substance and chemical addictions. Well, on our way home, we were both excited because my daughter was home. She got home an hour prior to us going that direction. It was around 8:30 or 9 at night. So we got home and enjoyed the company of my daughter. And my wife was talking to my daughter as if both of them was going through the experience of attending college. The first night wasn't too bad. It was just, introducing my daughter to what was now her mother in the condition that she was in. So I needed to make some decisions about how I would care for my wife. Tried to manage working and start a new life. So that first night, I don't know, we all went to bed somewhere around 11 o'clock and, was just really settling in the reality of what we were going to be dealing with from here on.